Hello, Ellie here with WhoCulture. If there's anybody in the UK right now, then like me, you might be wondering, where's the summer? There's a lot of rain happening right now and I would very much like some sunshine. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about the weather in the UK, as much as it would thrill me. There's another reason that I'm here today. Now, since we're in the 60th year of Doctor Who, we thought it would be a good time to take a look back on the 50th year, which was already 10 years ago. But more specifically, The Day of the Doctor, an episode that I love, and one that was a massive success in every conceivable way. Now, it may have turned out really well, but the development was actually quite troubled, and it went through a couple of different iterations before it turned into the episode that we ultimately got. So in late 2012, it was announced that a special episode of Doctor Who would be broadcast to celebrate the show's 50th anniversary. Plans for this episode had been in the works way before the announcement was made. And there's even an interview with Stephen Moffat from November 2011, where he states that he knows exactly what he's going to do with the 50th.
We're revving up for it, well, we know what we want to do, and I'm not telling you what it is.
Spoilers!
But the reason he sounds so confident so far in advance is because he was telling the truth. He did have a vision for the 50th anniversary. But plans can and do go wrong, especially in TV land when you're racing a mile a minute trying to put something on the screen. Moffat knew that fans would expect some Multidoctor shenanigans for such a momentous occasion. Now, let's not forget that he had experience with Multidoctor stories as well, having brought together the 5th Doctor and the 10th Doctor in 2007 for the minisode Time Crash. So for the 50th, he wanted to team up Matt Smith's 11th Doctor with David Tennant's 10th Doctor. And he wanted them to go back into the Time War to confront Christopher Eccleston's 9th Doctor. Now, in its early stages, this episode was also literally just called The Time War. But it's all very well and good that Moffat wanted Eccleston to return, but as you probably guessed, the actor himself wasn't too keen to return. And he did meet with Moffat to discuss the episode, but he ultimately decided against it. Now, he later stated that he liked Moffat and that he strongly considered it, but he just ultimately didn't feel that the script did justice to the 9th Doctor. Obviously, it wasn't ideal that one of his leading men said no. But on the flip side, Moffat was starting to have his own doubts about including the 9th Doctor in the first place, because 9 is clearly a brand new Doctor in Rose, playing with his ears, commenting on his appearance, all that stuff that we took as this man has only just established who he is. So Moffat wasn't really sure whether he should be the one to have destroyed the Daleks and the Time Lords in the Time War. It just didn't fit. And Moffat even said, "I was always nervous of that one because it doesn't fit with Rose at all. He is a brand new Doctor in Rose. He's absolutely definitely new. It couldn't have been him who pushed the button in the Time War because that's a new man," very explicitly in that episode. I also had trouble, I have to be honest, imagining it being Paul McGann's Doctor. I actually agree with him here. In Rose, I feel as though the Doctor has had his face for a short period of time. Again, he doesn't seem to know what he looks like yet, so yeah, big giveaway. Now granted, it's not like there were tons of mirrors sitting around during the Time War, but if he was the one to push the button, he surely would have seen his face at some point. But it's certainly an interesting concept to think about. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about Eccleston playing that role of the War Doctor. Do you think it would have worked, or do you think it would have been a bit pants? But regardless, Eccleston's refusal was a huge blow, especially considering the entire episode kind of focused on exploring the Time War and the Doctor who fought in it. But bizarrely, 9 wasn't the only Doctor Moffat struggled to lock down for the 50th. Now, this being Doctor Who and all, you'd assume that the guy who plays the Doctor, Matt Smith at the time, would be in it. That's a fair assumption to make, right? The Doctor will be in Doctor Who. But according to Moffat himself, there was a time where Matt Smith wasn't under contract to appear in the 50th special. Neither was David Tennant, since he had departed years ago and wasn't actually on the BBC's payroll anymore. Now, it's possible that Smith's contract ran out at the end of Series 7 and didn't cover any further specials, because these technically aren't part of any series. Like Tennant's specials in 2009 weren't part of any series. That's a pretty strange problem to have, but however it came about, Moffat was then forced to plan a Doctor Who anniversary special without any Doctors. What? The only person he had at his disposal at the time was Jenna Coleman, who was still under contract. And why was she under contract and not Matt Smith? Honestly, I have no idea. That is a weird thing. That's very confusing.
You tell me who's under contract to be in it. Jenna. I don't think that's where you're gonna cut it.
So, Moffat came up with a bizarre version of the 50th where the Doctor is wiped from all of time and space after stepping into the time stream at the end of the name of the Doctor. And then the Doctor would then turn up in a series of vignettes, played by famous actors each time. Clara would encounter these various Doctors, and it would be up to her to essentially remember him back into existence. Kind of like in The Big Bang, where Amy has to remember the Doctor to bring him back to the universe after it blew up and all the Pandorica stuff. Can you imagine that? A version of the 50th with just Clara and some celebrity guest playing the Doctor. It's a fun idea, but it's not very big anniversary celebration, is it? It kind of sounds more like a comedy sketch or a one-off mini-sode. It's like the Curse of Fatal Death version 2. Definitely sounds like something that would be on Comic Relief or Children in Need or something like that. Don't really know if it would have worked as a special, especially for the 50th anniversary. Now, with all these things going wrong, compounded with the stress of producing a landmark episode for one of the most beloved shows in history, it's not really surprising that Moffat found this period of his Doctor Who tenure rather unenjoyable. Now, in a candid interview after exiting the show in 2017, he confessed that he didn't cope very well while developing the 50th, that he was upset all the time, that everyone was cross with him because the scripts were late. Here's how he described the ordeal in a separate interview in 2014. "I don't think I've ever worked on anything that was as difficult, terrifying, and as much of a responsibility as writing the 50th anniversary episode of Doctor Who. I can remember sitting with my wife saying, I can't tell if it's good anymore. It could be rubbish. I'll have to leave the country. I'll have to fake my own death." And then going from a meeting with the producers the week I was meant to hand the script in, and we were still trying to assemble the cast. We all just sat there thinking, this is impossible. This can't ever work. Now, we should probably bear in mind that as well as Doctor Who, he was also working on another high-profile show at the exact same time. He was writing and showrunning the third series of Sherlock at the same time as the 50th. While also overseeing Series 7B of Doctor Who. Just think how full this man's inbox must have been. Now, we usually don't think about how difficult it is to make Doctor Who. We're just like, oh, it's easy, you can churn out 14 episodes a year. And The Day of the Doctor was more difficult than most episodes are. Now, of course, there is a happy ending here. Matt Smith and David Tennant both signed on, which honestly begs the question of why they didn't lock both of them down before Moffat was forced to think about a weird solo Clara episode. Late in the day, Moffat then secured John Hurt to play the War Doctor, who was the first choice for the role after Christopher Eccleston, so maybe not the first choice? The first choice when they needed a different choice. But he stepped into the gap left by Eccleston, and the rest, as they say, is history. I personally really enjoy The Day of the Doctor. I love the fan service, but it's also an individual story on its own. There's plenty of Easter eggs to appease those fans that love to look for them. I mean, the Black Archive alone is full of so many things that you can pick out, and I love to do that. I love to pause those scenes, look at everything in the background. It just makes it that little bit more enjoyable, just that little nod to the fans to have a little bit of fun there. I don't think I would have enjoyed a Clara-centric anniversary special. It's no secret that Clara's not my favourite character. I think she probably has grown on me a little bit more recently, but also, of all the characters to lead an anniversary special, I think Clara's not the one to do it. And also, it's a bit of a cop-out to just have famous actors stepping in as a cameo as the Doctor. I don't think that would have worked. Definitely glad that's not the option they went with. And likewise, I'm not sure that the Ninth Doctor would have worked in that role. Don't get me wrong, I would have loved to have seen more of Christopher Eccleston in the role of the Ninth Doctor. One series was certainly not enough. But I also think that it's important to have an actor who wants to be there first and foremost, but also when you're introducing something in a timeline that already exists, it needs to make sense, and I agree that putting the Ninth Doctor as the face that destroyed the Time Lords and the Daleks didn't feel quite right. It didn't really fit with what we had already seen and what had already been established. So I think what we ended up with was the best of all of the ideas that Moffat had that we know of. I mean, he might have a whole book somewhere full of all these wacky, wonderful ideas, and there's got to be something somewhere. But anyway, I digress. Yes. Overall, the version of The Day of the Doctor that we got, I think, was the best that we possibly could have, and it makes me extremely excited to see what we're going to have for the 60th. I know it's a different showrunner, but, you know, we've got David Tennant back, and anniversary specials, just in general, are just such a major event. I just can't wait. But anyway, thank you for listening. That's everything that I've got for The Day of the Doctor. But before you go, Make sure that you do check out 20 Things You Didn't Know About the Day of the Doctor for an even deeper dive into this episode, and that's linked somewhere on the screen right now. I don't know where. I've been Ellie with WhoCulture, and in the words of River Song herself, goodbye, sweeties.